I obviously record tons of music. I play a lot of instruments myself, but I always wanted to have a room where, I have a lot of instruments at my disposal. I like to have everything kind of plugged in at the same time. And so I kind of have this setup flipped from what people may traditionally think of as a studio. So the smaller room is my live room where I've got drums set up and some speakers and I can do vocals and the glass between. But the bigger room is the control room where I can play around with sounds and, tons of pedals and guitars and keyboards. And it's always been my dream to kind of have a setup like this where, I can cut with other musicians, but it's easy to work on my own stuff by myself, and that the workflow is easy. I don't have a console in here, but I use the UA console as my console. It works so great for me, and I really can get all of that analog vibe using universal audio in a small, compact setup, which obviously, we've done in this room. I mean, I kind of have everything set up all the time, actually. Like I can touch anything. It's always set up, and I have sequencers kind of running. So if someone comes in the room and we want to make a song, because I do think that flow is so important, that when you have the idea and you can actually express that idea with the right sound, your creativity is on 10. You know what I mean? And those moments where you get stuck can really send you off track, and you can lose a whole song or a whole idea. I've always been like kind of working towards the ultimate setup. I don't know if you ever get there of like complete and creative like freedom. I love using console. Everything is running in there at all times. It's great because I can kind of hear effects that are, use the UA effects. I have a lot of effects kind of running in there as well. There's so many great options that and so much freedom. And then when I'm recording, I use all the tape emulators because I grew up recording on tape and on consoles, and but they take up a lot of space. There's so much maintenance involved and so many variables that can go wrong. And I love being able to like kind of save my current workflow as like, put in the date and be like, okay, today I did this setup, but tomorrow I might change it up if I want to go backwards. I can just press a button and we're back. Those of us that have worked in analog studios know that it's not quite that easy to go backwards. You kind of have to reset up everything. So it's a pretty luxurious setup to use console and the current setup that I have. I'm a big 1070. I love the Neve, the 1073. If I'm just starting a vocal chain, that and like an LA2A are kind of where I start, but there's so many different. I've been messing around with the SSL stuff a lot more. I love the 610. It's just so basic and easy. I have the LA 610 out there too, and so for me, it's like those are the things I'm familiar with. But I'm always tinkering. That's kind of my thing. I'm always playing around trying to find new stuff. When I moved into this room, it was just this room, and I didn't have the live room, so I was using the aux a ton. When I first got my first universal audio piece, I used the 55 Tweed plugin a ton. My evolution from there was when the aux came out. I got one right away, and I loved that because I had all these amps, and I used to live in an apartment in New York City, so I had all these amps that I couldn't really use, so it enabled me to use these different colors and flavors that normally I'd have to go in the studio and plug them in and mic them up, and I could actually use those and run them into the aux and use the attenuator. I originally got it because I was like, oh, it's cool, I can record and attenuate, but then I got into the whole speaker system and the rooms, and so I've done tons of recording with the aux. Right now I have my Supro hooked up into there with the head, but I also use my Fenders, and so that's been kind of the main flow that I've used. But just in the last couple of weeks, I got the Dream pedal. I actually plugged into it to try it and just test it out, and I have not unplugged it since, and have made an entire record pretty much in those few weeks with Sun Little, where we pretty much got most of the guitar tones through the Dream. I was blown away. And it's really funny because also in that time period, I built this room and have my speakers out there and my heads out there. And my intention initially was like, oh, I'm gonna have all of my tones from my amps, and I actually haven't even done that yet, which I intend to do, but the dream it just sounded so authentic and so great, and it's just so easy. It was just right there in front of me. So right now I've got just a couple, honestly, a lot of it I just plugged straight into it, and now I've got my little flyboard up there plugged into the dream, and I've been getting great tones that way. Again, it's like kind of always tinkering and messing around and evolving and adding to the sounds. So for that King Canyon record, I mainly used the aux setup. I love the EMT 140 plugin. I use that a lot. I use the Capitol Chambers a lot. I use the reverb in the aux a lot, and in certain cases I'll use other pedals and stuff. But those are kind of the main tools that I use for that. I love like the Space Echo, and I think the Galaxy is the kind of a similar thing for that. Yeah, but again, always kind of evolving and changing. A lot of that record I used, I think it was the 412 cabinet in the aux with the room mic cranked. And so that's a lot of that really ethereal, verbed out room sounds from that. A lot of times when I'm writing, either on my own or even with a new artist that I'm working with, the tones will kind of inspire the part, you know? So a lot of times, even like the King Canyon stuff, I think one of the songs, I didn't realize I had the mics on the cabinet muted, and I just had the room mic on, and it created this like really crazy dreamy sound. And that is where the first initial idea for the song came from. So a lot of times, like you said, you know, experimenting with things. And in that case, I didn't even realize what I was doing. I was like, why does it sound so weird? Oh, this is great. And then when I actually looked into it, I was like, oh, I have those muted, but I loved that sound. It wasn't even on purpose. So yeah, I think experimentation, you know, feeds my creativity. And that's why I love having my own space, because you know, I'm not on the clock and I can spend time like for as long as I want and see where it takes me. So much incredible music right now is being made, and I think part of that is due to the fact that a lot of people that didn't have access to these tools, you know, these amazing delays and tape machines and pieces of gear that years ago were unattainable and so expensive. Now, so many of us can have them at our fingertips, which is it's amazing. Universal Audio has made so much of my favorite gear that as a guitar player, selfishly, the more pedals that come out, the more excited I'm gonna get, especially after trying the Dream pedal. I'm excited to see where that goes. And from what I hear, there is more stuff coming. I don't know what it is yet. But other than that, I'm always just like excited to see what's coming next. I'm so excited to dig into some of the synths and stuff. I haven't really tried the Polymax or the Moog yet. So I'm excited to try some of that too. Well, one thing I will say about Sweetwater, especially after visiting and putting out my guitar exclusively with Sweetwater and watching the quality control, you know, they are looking at every detail of every piece of gear. I was amazed at the process the guitar goes through before it gets to the consumer. It was incredible, because years ago, you know, I was, you know, maybe hesitant to buy a very expensive piece of gear through a website. But now, you know, I think that not only am I sold, but obviously that's kind of the way people are doing it now. But it's allowing for every musician to have access to the best gear, you know, and it's like you're getting it knowing that it's in great condition and that it's the best stuff out there. So yeah, it's an amazing time to be a producer and to be a musician, because we can make records at home that are really at the highest level, which wasn't the case when I was younger. You know, like you were very limited in what you could achieve in a home studio. Now, you know, especially for a guy like me who loves analog sounds, I can get those sounds. I mean, it's not necessarily the same as being in Abbey Road in, like, you know, the late 60s, but it's pretty damn close. The kind of sounds we can get just in a room like this.